Hello everyone, it's Lee again. Tonight I got a bit of a serious topic to talk about. And the topic for tonight, since I am going on my walk again, like I try to do every evening, the topic is simple. If I could talk to the Vietnamese government face to face, what would we talk about? What questions would I ask? Well, this is a bit of a heavy topic, so buckle up. So, the first thing I'd go ahead and talk about is, well, I'll go over my experience real quick. See, I came to Vietnam back in October 2018. I got married November 18th, legally and religiously. And by the way, it was a Buddhist ceremony. So, yeah. Vietnamese Buddhist ceremony. Now, what religion am I? Well, that's something I don't really talk about. Unless you know me very, very well, I don't talk about my religion that much. Moving on. So, got married November 18th. And then we welcomed my daughter into the world on November 14th, 2021. Alright. When I first came to Vietnam, I thought that Vietnam was a lot like America. You know, because I didn't know a lot about Vietnam back then. I thought that a person could get any job, and that if they didn't want to work a job anymore, that they could just go ahead and get another job. You know, it'd be easy, just like it is in the States. It's not true at all. See, some people would think that having white skin is a blessing. It's actually not. It's a curse. See, the reason why I bring that up is quite simple. Here in Vietnam, if you have white skin, you come from America, and your first language is English, then guess what? You're an English teacher. It doesn't matter what you want to be. You're not allowed to do anything else. You're not allowed to be anything else. Just an English teacher. That's it. And if you don't want to teach English anymore, then you don't work. Period. At all. So, this would circle back to what would I ask the Vietnamese government? Like, what would I talk to the Vietnamese government about? Hold on just a moment. There's a lady singing karaoke again. And a bunch of people getting on a sleeper bus. I wonder why that's not legal. Why is a sleeper bus getting off here in the middle of nowhere? I don't like that. Must be a wedding party or a funeral, one of the two. Anyways, moving on. So what would I ask the Vietnamese government? Well, see, yeah, it's actually very hot today. See, I've been here in Vietnam total, going on 7 years. October will be 7 years I've been in Vietnam. What I would ask the Vietnamese government is this. For foreigners that have been here for at least 3 years, and they can prove it, because they never left the country at all. They stayed in Vietnam for a period of 3 years, legally and lawfully. They should be able to apply for a foreigner work exemption, like a foreigner worker exemption certificate or something like that. And what I'm talking about is that it would be a document from the government that would allow foreigners to work local jobs. See, here in Vietnam, there's a bunch of jobs available. There's a lot. But see, unfortunately, when you combine the fact that there's a lot of employers who don't enjoy following the rules, combined with people who don't know the rules, that's the reason why you have a lot of citizens that are out of work. You have all these jobs and nobody's working because of those two important factors. So, Besides the foreigner worker exemption, I also go ahead and start having the government randomly inspect the businesses, and I mean all businesses, to make sure that they're complying with the labor laws. And that if businesses are found to not be complying with the labor laws, that they be punished accordingly. See, here in Vietnam, you will see signs that say things like female only, 18 to 25 only, you know, stuff like that. Even though it's highly illegal because of the labor laws, employers here don't care at all. They do what they do because nobody cares, and those that do care don't have the money to fight them. So I would ask that the government heavily enforce the labor laws. I mean heavily enforce the labor laws. Next thing I would do, besides the foreign workers, asking the government to go ahead and start, gotta watch where I'm going here because I don't want to get hit. So besides that, the next thing I would do is talk about the foreigners that aren't supposed to be in Vietnam. Now, where are these foreigners, you might be asking? Well, there's at least 4 or 5 different groups. You've got the bed packers. These are foreigners that usually come from Western countries, United States, South Africa, Russia, Europe, you know. They're predominantly white, they predominantly come from Western countries, they come here with huge backpacks, and they normally fly signs and beg for money. I lost my passport. I need money to help fund my trip around the world, blah, blah. Well, see, for foreigners like that, that's just the first part. Next, to have the tourists. Now, tourists in general, I don't really have a problem with. What I do have a problem with are the tourists who moonlight as English teachers. That's illegal. See, Vietnam, as I've discussed in my previous videos, has very strict rules about who can teach English. But then you have the rotten and corrupted English centers, which I'll talk about later. They enjoy employing these illegal teachers because they can treat them like garbage, pay them next to nothing, and if they don't want to teach anymore, no job. So, that's the second class. The third class are the border hoppers, or those who cross the border illegally into Vietnam. Now, these are primarily people from Africa, people from other Asian countries. They somehow are able to hop the border from countries like Cambodia, Laos, maybe even Thailand, and or the people who deliberately overstay their visa. So there's people like that. And the fourth group, which is one that I personally despise, are the military draft dodgers. Now currently, there are 2 different wars going on. Maybe 3, if things don't look up between China and Taiwan. Currently, countries that are in conflict, or at war with each other, however you want to put it, is Ukraine versus Russia. Now, Ho Chi Minh City, I know, has a bunch of Ukrainian and Russian men of fighting age that should be fighting for their country, but instead they're hiding out here in Vietnam because the Russian embassy doesn't feel like collecting their citizens and shipping them back home. The Ukrainian embassy doesn't feel like, you know, fishing their citizens out and shipping them back home. So yeah, we got a bunch of military draft dodgers from both Ukraine and Russia that are here in Ho Chi Minh City and throughout all Vietnam, especially Da Nang. Yeah, a lot of draft dodgers in Da Nang. So moving on with that. Besides that, you also have Israel versus Palestine. Now, here's the thing. Last time I checked, and I'm not going to go ahead and get into the whole Israel-Palestine issue because that sets off a lot of issues, if you know what I mean. But to politely say it, we have also a bunch of Israelis here in Vietnam, especially Ho Chi Minh City, men of fighting age, who should be fighting for their country, and instead they're hiding out here instead. Now, me personally, it doesn't matter where you come from. I hate all draft dodgers equally. Now, why is that? I hate military draft dodgers because I come from a military family. My dad and my mom both honorably served in the U.S. Army. My dad served for over 20 years as a surgeon's technician, like a surgeon's assistant, basically. My mom served over 15 years as an MP Customs. Yeah, MP Customs. She saw a bunch of stuff. And also, she was a cook. You know, in the Army, it's known as death from within. It's kind of like a joke. So, but getting into my parents' military service a little bit, neither of my parents saw action. Both of them served during the Vietnam War, but none of them actually saw action. My dad never got into it, but he said because of a paperwork mistake, instead of being shipped to the front lines here in Vietnam, he actually went to Busan in South Korea, where he stayed for a period of time. And he went and said, he gave me a few pieces of advice. He said, hey, if you ever visit South Korea, now remember, this was during the 70s and the 80s, alright, so don't get on me about this. But he went and told me that if you ever eat a meal in South Korea, and the meat looks a little suspicious, don't ask what it is. Just eat it, say it tastes good, and leave it at that. And I asked him why. And he didn't want to get into it. He just went and said, just like that, if the meat looks suspicious, just eat it, say it tastes good, and leave it at that. That's it. So, the second thing he said was that the Koreans make a red sauce that makes wasabi sauce look very tame by comparison. So I'm like, okay. And of course, she also talks about kimchi. My mom, she being female and all, she couldn't go to Vietnam, so she went straight to Germany. And my dad, after he was done in Busan, he went stateside for a little bit before he went to Germany. My parents met, fell in love, got married. Now they got married at Fort Carson, Colorado, back when it was still a military base. Now, when they were in Germany, my dad had a bit of a drinking problem. He drank like a fish. My mom said it was either him or it was either her or the alcohol. So what he did was he put the bottle down. He didn't touch a drop since. Yeah, he stayed sober for the rest of his life after that. Now me, I was the last of 3 kids. My sister and my brother were both born in Germany. I was the only one born stateside. And I was born at Fort Riley. And it doesn't get much more American than that. Both parents serving in the Army, and being born on an Army base, it doesn't get much more American than that. So, that's the reason why I hate military draft dodgers with a passion, because I come from a military family. Serving your country means everything. Some people aren't meant to serve. I understand that, but if your country's at war, and they need people, and you're a man of fighting age, like say between the ages of 18 and 40, let's just say, if you're a man between those ages, and you refuse to fight for your country, you're a coward. Wow. I don't care if you're from Ukraine. I don't care if you're from Russia. I don't care if you're from Israel. I don't care if you're from China, Taiwan, I don't care where you're from. If you refuse to fight for your country, you are a coward. Plain and simple. Now, beyond that, the fifth group that I talked about, kind of blends in with group number 2, are the people who overstay their visas. These are the people who come here on like a tourist visa or something, maybe, I don't know, 30, 60, 90 days, whatever. And instead of leaving when they're supposed to, they stay even longer. Either because of the fact that they forgot, which there's like a 0.5% chance of people actually forgetting, or the other 99.5% reason why they did not go ahead and leave when they were supposed to, because they love Vietnam so much that they want to stay here. They just don't want to go ahead and do the border crossing where you have to leave Vietnam and come back. So, yeah. So these 5 groups of foreigners, what would I do? Well, if I could ask the government of Vietnam about this, I'd go ahead and ask them to have more strict control over the illegal foreigners, to root them out, and have them, see, first things first, in order to find all these illegal foreigners, first you have to go to the English centers. And I mean all of them. From the small mom and pop English centers all the way to the mega corporations. Like BUS, ILO, ILA, OLA, anything with 3 letters is a major corporation. So what I do is I would have, say, the Ministry of Education and Training combined with the Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of Public Security go around to all the English centers, from small mom and pop shops all the way up to the big corporations, and go through and thoroughly examine all the paperwork of all the teachers that they have. And if anything looks fishy or suspicious, then that teacher is questioned. If they find out that teacher's illegal, that teacher has bad missing, no paperwork, doesn't qualify to be an English teacher because they don't have the 3 years of required experience, they don't have the bachelor's degree or the college trade certificate, they don't have, a teacher certificate, if they're a non-native speaker, if they don't have IELTS, TOEFL, or Cambridge test results that are less than 2 years old, at C1 advanced or above. If you find foreigners like that, jail them for a minimum of 2 years, but not to exceed 5. So jail them for a minimum of 2 years, and then kiss them out with a do not return order attached to their file. So if they ever try to come back to Vietnam, especially under a tourist visa or anything like that, they'll be automatically denied. Because Vietnam does not need illegal foreigners at all. As tourists, as English teachers, Vietnam does not need illegal foreigners at all. So far I talked about, for the legal and legitimate foreigners, if you've been here over 3 years legitimately, and you can prove it, you never left Vietnam, you should qualify for a foreigner worker certificate or an exemption certificate to allow you to work local jobs. And basically the other thing I talked about was how the government should heavily enforce labor laws and go after businesses who don't know how to obey the labor laws, go after the English centers that employ illegal teachers. Alright. Now, what else do I talk about with the government of Vietnam if I could? Well, here's the thing. If I could talk to the government of Vietnam about anything I wanted to, I'd go ahead. The next topic I would talk about is the fact that recently they went ahead and made it easier for foreigners to obtain citizenship, Vietnamese citizenship. Now, in case the government of Vietnam doesn't want to do the other stuff that I was talking about earlier, as far as a worker exemption or foreigner worker exemption where foreigners can work local jobs or whatnot, the next thing I would do is ask them to make it even easier than they already have for foreigners to obtain citizenship. But, see, as I mentioned earlier this year, the Vietnamese government actually made it easier for foreigners to obtain citizenship. But what I asked them to do to refine that idea even further would be to remove the land ownership requirement. See, they've already removed financial responsibility, residency, and language proficiency. They already removed that. But what I want them to remove, in addition to all of that, is the land ownership requirement. See, under the Law on Citizenship 2008 edition, which I do have that, I'm exempt, actually, from proving language, financial responsibility, and language, financial responsibility, residency, because my wife is Vietnamese. And I also have my half Vietnamese, half American dollars. That's doubly qualified for Vietnamese citizenship. But the thing is, though, is that when I tried to apply for citizenship, they told me I had to prove a year's worth of income, even though I already told them I was exempt, and they still said, well, you gotta prove a year's worth of income. Well, here recently, like I said, they went and said that, the government has officially stated that, you no longer have to go ahead and prove your financial responsibility, residency, or language proficiency. But like I said, I'd also ask the government to remove the land ownership requirement. Because, see, remember, as I mentioned in one of my previous videos, that here in Vietnam, as a foreigner, you are only allowed to own an apartment. That's it. You're not allowed to own land. You're not allowed to own a house on that land. As a foreigner, you are only allowed to own an apartment. And that's only in areas that have a 60-40 ownership rating. 60% local to 40% foreigners. That's it. Now, me personally, I don't feel like spending $90,000 or $2 billion thereabouts on an apartment I'm never going to use, just so I can have a land ownership certificate. I don't want that. All right. So to make things easier, like I say, remove the land ownership requirement. And if a foreigner has legally and lawfully resided within Vietnam for a period of 5 years or more, they should automatically qualify for citizenship. They should get like a letter in the mail, or a notice to go to their local police station or whatever to start the process for citizenship. And if they refuse, then they refuse. But I'm pretty sure you'd only be allowed to refuse once, and then they won't notify you again. But if you wanted to start the process, for that at some later point, then they'd be more than happy to assist with that. But see, with me, I'm not going to renounce my U.S. citizenship, so I want dual citizenship. Now, what's special about dual citizenship is that it's only under approval of the President of Vietnam himself. Yep. And of course I want to retain my U.S. citizenship because of the fact that it has a lot of benefits. Obviously you don't need a visa to go to the U.S. You don't need a bunch of other stuff to go to the U.S. Just hop on a plane and go. Provided you took your course of anti-malaria drugs first before you leave, because that's one of the main requirements to come back to the U.S. So, remove the land ownership requirement and make it easier for foreigners to get Vietnamese citizenship. And, beyond that, what I also asked for, in addition to the citizenship certificate that announces that I'm a naturalized Vietnamese citizen, that I would want the right to work in writing from the government that states in both Vietnamese and English. I will get 2 copies of this. It would state in Vietnamese and English that since I'm a naturalized Vietnamese citizen, that I'm allowed to work any job a local citizen can. And that if any business refuses to hire me because I'm a foreigner, then I'll be able to take legal action against them. Technically, I can do that now. It's a very expensive process, and I just ain't got the money for it. So, this land ownership, land ownership, I already talked about that. But with the worker, like the right to work, essentially, once I get the citizenship certificate, and I get my Kenko Kongyan, which is a citizenship ID card, I get the passport and motorbike license, like everything that proves that I'm a naturalized Vietnamese citizen. And I take that, normally just the citizen ID card, you don't have to really bring your passport, but bring your citizenship ID card and bring that into a business and ask for a job. And if they refuse or they think the ID is fake, you gotta bring out the letter, the right to work. And if they still refuse to hire me because I'm not Vietnamese, then I could actually, contact the ward office, labor department, ask to speak with them, and inform them that, I'm a naturalized Vietnamese citizen, I want to work at this business, and they're refusing to hire me. What can you do for me? Now, people might be thinking, well, you don't know Vietnamese that well, which is true. I don't know Vietnamese that well. So how are you going to argue your case? Well, that's what technology is for. See, everybody knows that I hate AI with a passion, that I will not use AI in any way, shape, or form for any reason, period. Google Translator is not AI. All Google Translator is just a dictionary. That's it. You type in a sentence in English, it spits out Vietnamese, you translate it again, share from Vietnamese, translates it back into English. It's not AI. So I'd use that. Plead my case and hope for the best. Now, see, there is a possibility, a rather slim one, that I might get a job that way. But the employer probably wouldn't be happy with me and probably would try to find excuses to fire me. But I still want that right to work certificate, just in case, because you never know. Now, beyond all that, the other thing I would ask for, speaking to the Vietnamese government and all, what I ask for is the fact that if they want to turn the major cities into super low emission zones where people want to use electric vehicles, that's whatever. I could care less about that. But I would ask them to not restrict gas-powered vehicles in smaller cities, towns, and villages. Because for most people, that's literally all they can afford. It's just a cheap, dirty, old motorbike just to get around town. And sometimes people live so far apart from each other that they don't have a horse or an ox or anything like that to get them where they need to go. So they use an old motorbike to get them where they need to go. So if they want to make the major cities like Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh City, Hue, Da Nang, Phu Quoc Island, if they want to make all those areas like super low emission zones or no emission zones, I don't have a problem with that. But I would respectfully request that they do not do that with the smaller towns, villages, stuff like that. Because you also have to think about the poor. You know, the poor can't afford brand new motorbikes. Not unless some billionaire decides to donate them, which no billionaire I have heard of would ever do such a thing. Maybe build a village, but they would never donate brand new electric motorbikes. And besides that, transitioning from gas power to electric, see, the electrical grid here in Vietnam is old. How old precisely, I don't know, but I know it's old. And because it's old, it will not be able to handle the stress, the strain, and the load from all these vehicles charging all at once. Because you're talking about, including foreigners, you have about 110 million people here in Vietnam, approximately. And if every single one had an electric motorbike and an electric car instead of gas-powered vehicles, the electrical grid would shut down. So there'd be too much stress, too much strain, too much load on the system. Now, from what I know, and I could be mistaken about this, but from what I know, Vietnam has coal power and hydropower, if I remember right. But Vietnam currently does not have any nuclear plants, which some people would say is a good thing because of all the pollution that the nuclear plants pull off, but it is what it is. Now, if cold fusion technology becomes a lot better, a lot more advanced, what I would do is have 3 cold fusion reactors. That's it. One in Ho Chi Minh City, one in Hue, and one in Hanoi. That's it. Because cold fusion reactor, especially a large size one, would be able to power the entire country with electricity to spare. So we'd be able to export electricity to other countries. Now, cold fusion technology is not theoretical anymore. It's actually been tested several times. Europeans have a reactor. The Chinese, I think, have 2 reactors. I think the US has 1 reactor. The problem is generating a sustained plasma field. Because the plasma field is held in place with an extremely strong magnet. Because the plasma that's generated is superheated to such an extent that's about 1,000,000 times hotter than the surface of the sun. Yeah. Imagine how hot that is. Well, it looks like I was not wrong. Looks like there actually is a funeral. Man, I wish I didn't have to see that today. But it is what it is. So, 3 cold fusion reactors to be able to power the entire country of Vietnam. Gotta wait for the ambulance to turn around. Something tells me they just delivered the body. Keep going here. Yeah, they just picked up a coffin. See, in America, if the ambulance is running with the lights but no siren, that means dead bodies present. Which, you know, it'll happen to everyone one day. Because the only 2 things that are certain in this world, death and taxes. That's it. Alright, so beyond all that, what I also talk about is the requirements for English teachers. So, legitimate English teachers have to have a clean criminal record from their home country, but if they've been here more than 6 months, they only need the local background check, and that's it. clean criminal check. You have to have 3 years of actual certified teaching experience. You can't come here as a fresher like L, but a lot of English centers hire them because they're corrupt and rotten. So you have to have 3 years of English teaching experience. Not only that, you also have to have a teacher's certificate. And if you're a non-native speaker, you have to have IELTS, TOEFL, Cambridge English test results that's less than 2 years old, at C1 Advanced or above according to the CEFR scale. Now, all your stuff, all your documents, your passport, your basic invitation, I think your basic invitation letter doesn't need to be translated, but your passport, your bachelor's degree or college trade certificate, your criminal background check from your home country, all that stuff has to be translated, certified, and attested to before you come to Vietnam. That way everything is easy breezy once you get here. You know, it can help you apply for CRC card and the work permit. But remember, the attestation, certification, translation of documents, CRC card, work permit, all that stuff, the English Center pays for, not you. And if they don't want to pay for it, you shouldn't work for them. Now see, what I would ask the government to do would be to make it even more strict. And instead of allowing all this extra unnecessary paperwork, to only allow foreigners who have a bachelor's degree or higher from an offline, in-person only university, so no online universities will be accepted. Cuts down on forgeries, you know? Offline, in-person only bachelor's degree in English language education. Now, the reason why I want that instead of all the other stuff is because of the fact that instead of having a bachelor's degree in, say, gender studies, you have a bachelor's degree in English language education. So you combine that, last time I checked, you don't need a teaching certificate. Now, you still may be required to get like TESOL or something like that, but it'd be super easy to get it. You know, if you already got a bachelor's degree in English language education for kindergarten, elementary, middle, high school, or primary, lower, upper, secondary, university, you know, stuff like that, and you have certified 3 years of experience, or you'll be a shoo-in over here. And not only that, it would raise the standards and the quality. Because the illegal teachers that are here, they either have, you know, bachelor's degrees in worthless fields that's not related to teaching English, or they have fake degrees. That's the other thing I would ask the government to do, is to investigate all the English teachers that are currently working in Vietnam and ask to authenticate the bachelor's degrees of every single foreigner here that's working as an English teacher here in Vietnam for authenticity. And if any fake degrees are found, well, last time I checked, it's not illegal for a foreigner to possess fake documents, but it is illegal for a business to accept fake documents. So, in that case, I feel that both the foreigner and the English employees them both be punished severely for passing off fake documents as authentic. So yeah, offline, in-person only bachelor's degree in English language education that negates the need for an IELTS, TOEFL, or TOEFL, or Cambridge, you know, certificate for non-native speakers, because of the fact that if you already speak English, you know, and you go to a 4-year bachelor's degree course in English language education, then that means you're good to go. You already know how to teach English. You're good. And that's what Vietnam needs. Is more people, not white-skinned foreigners, but people in general that have bachelor's degrees from an offline, in-person only university in English language education. So yeah, I make it even stricter. Now, for all the, now this leads into my next portion, what I'm going to say. Besides making the requirements stricter to be an English teacher, I would also ask the government of Vietnam to institute a national wage for foreigner English teachers. That would be no less than 2,200 USD a month. No less than that. For 100 hours, roughly 100 hours is usually about standard. We're paid by the hour, not by the month, really. So, essentially, it'd be about 100 hours a month. You need about 2,200 a month. So, I don't know how much that is in Vietnamese dong, because everything's done in US dollars, which it shouldn't be. All the advertising specify US dollars. Now, the reason why a national mandatory minimum wage for foreigner teachers is because of the fact that a lot of these English centers are illegal and they want to pay as cheaply as possible without giving the foreigner teacher any benefits or anything like that. That if they want the certification of legality from the Ministry of Education and Training, that they have to swear to pay their foreigner teachers a minimum of 2,200 USD a month net. That includes benefits like social, health, and unemployment insurance, on top of paid public holidays. Yeah, paid public holidays under Article 112, paid annual leave under Article 113. Oh yeah, that's already guaranteed by the labor laws. But what I'm thinking of, it would be heavily enforced. And any English center that refuses to comply to pay their teachers a fair wage and to treat them right. Hold up, I got intersection. Try and weave through here. Camera, keep the camera on, people. Please hit me. Alright, let's keep going. So, the national minimum wage of 2,200 USD per month per foreigner includes all rights and benefits as guaranteed by law. I already hear some of the English centers saying, but what about us in the village and remote areas? We can't pay that much. Yes, you can. You just don't want to. Yes, you can. See, here's the thing. Everyone has a right to education here in Vietnam. Everyone does. Alright? Doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, everybody has the same right to education. So, the solution is simple. If a foreigner chooses, not forced, but chooses, not coerced, but chooses to go to a village or a remote area, they'll still get the guaranteed 2,200 VND or 2,200 USD a month for 25 hours a week. Guaranteed. And if the English Center can't pay that, then I feel that a national fund should be set up to help support that. This way, Vietnam can import high quality, actual foreigner teachers to teach their kids English and not have to rely on the current workforce. Now, the thing is the fact that a lot of English centers, they don't obey the labor laws. They want to do as much as they can as cheaply as possible, try to deceive parents. See, one of the things here in Vietnam that I really don't like is the fact that a lot of people think that white skin equals high quality, and that couldn't be further from the truth. I've met teachers from Africa, I've met teachers from the Philippines, I've even met teachers from the Middle East and India. They're far better teachers than anything I could ever hope to be. They're really good. It's just that they're paid next to nothing because they're not white. So that's the reason why, if you institute that reform, bachelor's degree in English language education only, combine that with everything else, then The English centers would have no choice but to pay 2,200 USD a month or not hire teachers. Because of the fact that most English centers, they don't operate just as an English center. You see what I mean? They don't make hardly any money that way. How they make money is through the public school contracts that they get. You see, everything links together. And with the public school contracts, they have to go ahead and set that price, 2,200 USD a month minimum at 25 hours a week for each foreigner English teacher. That's an actual teacher. 3 years of certified experience before they even leave the United States, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, actual native English speakers. And non-native English speakers, same thing. If they have a bachelor's degree in English language education from an offline, in-person only university, accredited, also goes without saying. That they would also get the exact same pay as a native speaker. That would remove native versus non-native. All teachers get paid the same, and the quality of English language education here in Vietnam actually goes up as a result. No more kids speaking with Russian accents. No more kids speaking with European accents. No more kids speaking with a South African accent. Having actual qualified foreigner English teachers is what Vietnam needs. Now, some people complain that this would shut down the English centers. You see, the only English centers that would be shut down as a result of this would be the ones that aren't supposed to be operating in the first place. You see what I mean? The illegal English centers must be shut down. They must not be allowed to profit anymore. They're a cancer and a blight upon the English teaching sphere. They pump out low-quality English and raking in billions of dollars. And I know this because I used to be a part of the system. Until I put my foot down and I said, no more. I ain't doing this again. I'm not throwing test scores. I'm not going to let lady students copy answers off the board. I'm done. I'm not a clown. I'm a human being, and I want to be treated with dignity, honor, and respect. That's what I want. So, yeah. I'm getting back towards the end of my walk. So I just wanted to recap everything I've been saying. If I can remember it all. So, let foreigners work local jobs. They've been here in Vietnam for a period of 3 years or more. Make it easier for foreigners to obtain Vietnamese citizenship by removing the land ownership requirement. If a foreigner has been here for a period of 5 years or more without leaving and they can prove it, they should automatically qualify for citizenship regardless. Please hit me. Please hit me. I'm in a crosswalk. Please hit me. Some people don't know how to stop for pedestrians in a crosswalk. So, also, I asked them to go after the illegal foreigners that are in Vietnam, catch them, jail them, deport them, put a do not return stamp on their paperwork, thoroughly audit all the English centers in Vietnam to make sure only actual authentic English teachers are teaching English. Set up the national minimum wage of 2,200 USD a month at 25 hours a week, guaranteed. And yes, it's not hard to go ahead and find 2,200 or 25 hours a week, 100 hours a month for English teachers. It's not hard. Also, I go ahead and ask that they go ahead and make the requirements to be an English teacher even more strict than what it already is, because of all the illegal teachers that are teaching here in Vietnam that don't need to be here at all. That's one thing that I'd be asking about. And yeah, so see, I've lived in Vietnam for such a long time. Vietnam is near and dear to my heart. And unlike the other foreigners who come here to exploit Vietnam, I want to make Vietnam strong from the inside out. I'm not like other foreigners at all. I don't really like being around other foreigners unless I know the foreigner really well. I don't like being around foreigners in general unless I know them well. I live on the outskirts of town, and I'm happy here. I've seen this neighborhood develop from a quiet, area into a more bustling metropolis. And I'm happy with that too, development's important. I want to see Vietnam succeed. I want to see Vietnam grow and become more. That's what I want to see. And I feel the only way that's going to happen is if foreigners are treated better than how they are now. Like I said, take my case. I've lived here 7 years in October. I have college trade certificates, which are legal under Vietnamese law, approved college education. 7 years experience in teaching English. Or 7 years experience in customer service. I have 5+ years in teaching English, by the way. I got a lot of experience that doesn't involve teaching English, and I can't seem to get a job. So if I can't secure a job in something that I qualify for, the only thing I can think of to do is get citizenship, then turn around and apply again for work. Anywho, I've reached the end of my walk, so I pretty much talked about everything I want to talk about. I will ask that you like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and donate. Remember, I got PayPal, I have Picoin, I have Bitcoin, Ethereum, and USDT. I got 5 different ways you can donate to me. Alright? Any donations you give me will be happily accepted, thoroughly documented, taxes will be paid on them. And yeah, so have a good night, be safe. This is Generally Han reporting to you live from neighborhood 42 of An Phu Dong Ward, Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. And have a good night, be safe. Peace.